welcome to another Wolftime gaming video. Today I'm going to be painting up a B1 security droid. Slightly different from my previous B1 painting video, purely because that was a standard battle droid with just the tan colour, but we're adding a little bit of red on here, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Before we get started though, as usual, let's get the kettle on. So really your first stage is to get a base coat on there. I've used the Tamiya white spray. It's a very thin paint, almost gloss sort of a look, but it gives a nice covering and it's nice and thin for your contrast paints. And also at this point do paint your bases black as well, mainly because it makes things a little easier later on. So the first actual colour we're going to go with is a contrast paint called Skeleton Horde. Now I've found if you go with a fairly thin coat, it really looks effective and looks like the models in the actual films themselves, the B1 battle droids, specifically in Phantom Menace. You've got the security droids there, just on the image I'm showing you, and it's almost like a very light tan colour. And this Skeleton Horde is perfect for that look. And it looks really nice as well. You can already see as I'm actually going through the painting here, I know I've sped it up a bit, but you can see the contrast paint dropping straight into the recesses and giving you that natural shade. So it's really easy to do. It's easy to get an army on the table really quickly, and it looks really effective as well. Just take your time going around the model. What you do find if you've used the Tamiya white spray like I have is that some of the areas the paint may come away from the actual base coat. Don't worry about that, just go over it again before it dries, and it covers it really easily. What you'll also want to do is, as you've completed the painting around the model, just have a little bit of a cursory glance just around it to make sure you've basically hit all of those places. You don't want to really miss any, because if you go into it later on, it can look a bit thick if you go over do like a second coat. But while it's still a little bit damp, a little bit wet, you can just touch those areas up really easily, and it's really effective in the long run. And you can see that's exactly what I've done now. I've just basically put the model down and I'm just touching up a few of those little areas. So before we go on to the red area of the security droid, one of you guys have actually asked me how I get the point on the end of my brush and how I actually paint detail on some of the miniatures. It's mainly the Star Wars Armada minis that we were talking about, but in this instance I need to paint a small area. So what I do, I get a little bit of little bit of paint on the brush. In this case it's red paint, and I just put it onto there. Now I'm just using a saucer for my palette. A lot of people use wet palettes or use tissue or anything like that, and what I'll do is just put the actual paint on there, then dip it into a little bit of water and mix a little bit of water in, and what that does is water the paint down ever so slightly, just so you've not got pure paint on the brush, and it allows you to control the brush. And the best thing to do is then turn your paintbrush slightly in the paint, and that gives you a really nice point on the end of your brush, and it allows you to point very neat details. Obviously on the palette area here, well, what I'm using as a palette on the saucer, it's very smooth, so it's not perfect, but you can start to see now, just get a little bit of the paint and just mix it in with the water, and you can get a really neat lines, and that really helps when you're painting anything small, especially if you use a smaller brush as well. You can actually get some really nice details. So we'll get back to the mini, and I'll now paint the actual red areas of the security droid. Okay, so I'm going to use quite a bright red for this, and I'm using a Mephison Red, which is Citadel Miniatures colour. It's a really quite bright and striking red. However, when we add the Nuln Oil on it in a little while, you'll see it'll darken down to look like the droid you can see on the screen there, which you see in the film The Phantom Menace. It's like almost like quite a deep red. It's quite an easy one to actually achieve if you're using this technique. I've played around with it a little bit and found that it's quite simple. So I'm just going around the miniature now, just doing across the shoulders. Just be really, really careful. Use quite a small brush. I'm using the Army Painter Insane Detail brush, purely because I can concentrate and get those lines easier using the techniques we've talked about on my saucer. There's also a small area of red just on the chest. It's just quite a small line just along the bottom of his sort of chest plate, and that'll look quite nice. And just on the back on like his ears, it just makes him look a little bit more screen accurate. So the next colour I'm going to use is Corvus Black. This is essentially quite a light black, sort of a bluey grey colour that's ideal for painting these weapons and things for the Star Wars Legion minis, purely because it doesn't give you a matte sort of really dark black colour. So it actually leaves the areas quite light underneath, so it adds, you can see a little bit more detail. What I find when using a really dark black is you lose a lot of the detail on the actual minis, unless that's what you're going for, of course. So you just coat the gun completely. This is the only area we actually use the black, and then we'll highlight it slightly so it remains screen accurate, as we've talked about before, or as close as we can. And I'm doing that with Leadbelcher. It's a silver paint. You can just see just on the edge of the weapon that the droid's holding on the screen there, that it's got a little bit of silver. And all you do is touch the raised areas, and that looks quite nice. Now we're using Nuln Oil, which is essentially a shaded paint, and all we're doing is touching up the red areas and going over the weapon. We're not covering any other areas of the model, because that'll just add the shading to where we need it. So the final stage is basing. You can do this however you want. I'm doing it using Martian Ironearth. It's a really nice thick paint that you put down, and it all cracks and makes it look like a dry area. So I've gone for like a Geonosis sort of a feel. It looks really effective, as you can see here. So you can see a few of the cracks in the base. Can't see it very well, but it looks really, really nice. I'm really pleased with how it's turned out. The model himself looks great. There's a slight little bit of pooling on the top of the backpack there, but don't worry about it. It looks more real. It looks more effective. I really like the red. I think the red's looking really nice in comparison to what we see on screen. It's gone quite that nice deep red now. You've got that little red stripe just on the bottom of his chest plate, and he's looking really effective. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I really enjoyed painting him. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to see any future ones. I've got loads of videos coming up from me and my boys. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.